Hi, everybody. It's Michael Angelo Caruso. I'm here with an old speaker mate of mine, Mark Matteson. How are you, Mark?
If I was doing any better, I'd be twins.
Well, you're a big man to be twins. How tall are you now, baby?
5'19" and a half, vertically gifted, follically challenged.
Mark Matteson has been on the speaking circuit for ages. He's got a really interesting story about how he came up through a particular industry. He made a lot of hay in that industry as a speaker. And now he's an accomplished author. He does between 50 and 75 speaking engagements a year. And if you do travel for speaking, it's a pretty full calendar. Mark is an international bestseller. His big book, I think to date, is Freedom from Fear, although a lot of the other books are selling well as in addition. And for over 20 years, Mark's positive humor and peak performance tools have impacted organizations around the globe, igniting personal and professional success for tens of thousands of people. Congratulations on your great career.
Well, I'm just trying to keep up with you, man.
We've known each other a long time. I was trying to guess at how many years. And how did we meet? Do you remember?
I don't. It feels like I've always known you. What I remember doing with great fondness was a seminar in Norman, Oklahoma, with the folks from York, and we did a presentation skills seminar together.
That was so generous of you. That was your client, and you knew that they might have been getting a little tired of you. You've been with them forever, and you brought me in to thicken the gravy. I was so delighted. The only deal was I was not allowed to steal your client, which I believe I honored.
Well, yeah, shortly after that, they merged with another company, and, so.
It had nothing to do with that, is what I'm saying.
Right, yeah, I'm pretty sure that was true.
I did a lot of work with that other company, coincidentally.
Oh, that's funny.
I'm just kidding.
No, we hit it off like peanut butter and jelly. It was almost like kismet. You meet somebody and it's like we've been friends since we were born. And I literally don't remember how we met, but I think it might have been a referral. I think I was given 5 or 6 names of people who were part of some group or something, and I think I reached out and called.
Oh, maybe a mastermind situation.
Yes. And you were one of the people who I really connected with, and we just stayed in touch. We talked. Gosh, that was probably 12 years ago.
We were chatting before we came on of speaker styles. So many speakers are still so buttoned down. They want to deliver that 56-slide linear presentation, hold your questions to the end. And you're so unlike that. You're the antithesis. And I was saying, if there's anybody looser in the business than I am, it's you. And I love your style. I think it works fabulous for you. I certainly enjoyed watching you when we double teamed York back in the day. Mark, talk to me about the beginnings, man. This goes way back. You, as I recall, you were actually an owner and proprietor of an HVAC business. Is that true?
Well, I got all the way back to 1976. I left the Air Force. I was playing basketball on a scholarship, and I had a 3.0 in college, blood alcohol level. And I left after a year and joined the Air Force as an air conditioning technician. So I was a tech for 10 years. And then my 3rd year, I set some goals to sell and started selling service agreements and projects. At the end of the year, I'd sold more than the guy they hired full time. So my boss called me in the office and said, I can't get anybody to sell like you do. And next thing I know, I'm selling full time. And then I started going to every seminar and workshop I could. I was just a sponge, learning everything I could. And I remember going to a sales training in Pittsburgh for 2.5 days. And I remember sitting there at the end of the first day thinking, no, that's what I want to do, what that guy's doing.
Right.
Never mind this sales business. I want to be the speaker.
Well, you raise an interesting point that everybody gets wrapped up with it. Sales is some sort of a official sales capacity. It has to be a transaction, monetary transaction. But what we do as speakers is a form of selling. We're selling ideas or change of habit, right? And I think that's one of the reasons why you made that jump. You were so good at proper selling, and now you're good at this kind of, I don't know, ethereal selling, right? Let me try to turn you on to an idea.
Well, for me, I try to speak from the heart. I try to take a complicated issue like presentation skills and simplify it. In my new book, Freedom from Fat, I lost 50 pounds and 10 inches off my waist, which is what prompted me to write that book. And it comes down to 3 things: portions, quality, exercise, right? So I was speaking to 400 salespeople from Aflac, and I had the number 1 person stand up. And I said, why are you so successful? And he said, I make 40 calls a day. I quack loudly every day, and I offer my clients a choice of yeses. And I said, I hope everybody heard what he just said, because it's profound. I said, if you make 40 calls a day, I don't care what you sell, you're going to be wildly successful. Sales is a numbers game. Number two, if you're proud of where you work and proud of what you do, you transfer that belief to somebody else. That's the very essence of sales, is the transfer of belief. And number three, when you offer a choice of yeses, you change the buying dynamic from if you're going to buy to how. And so there's three things. If you want to succeed in sales, those are the three things to remember: activity, passion and belief, and a choice of yeses.
So back to your story, was the jump of, because we get a lot of people following about speaking, they want to become speakers, maybe they're consultants, want to become speakers, or they're working for the man, the woman, and they'd like to become consultants. Talk about freedom from fear. What did you have some doubt about whether or not this would work for you? Or was it hard to make that leap?
You know, somebody asked me, when did I know I was going to be a speaker? And I got sent home from kindergarten when I was 5 for singing the Jets Are in Gear from West Side Story. Now, it wasn't my rendition of that particular song that was the problem, it was my timing. The rest of the class was singing the national anthem at the time. So I was sent home with a note that said, Mark has a lot of energy. It was pinned to my shirt, you know. We just need to find a way to channel it in a more constructive way. Can we conference next week? So my mother knew right then, well, Mark needs a stage. So, you know, my whole life has been, my senior year in high school, they asked me to put on a skit at the assembly for school. So I wrote this play, and I devised characters, and I coached my friend, and we did it, and it was just this huge production. You know, my whole life I've been doing this. So really I surrendered to this, maybe more than anything else, Michael. I surrendered to being a speaker.
Good for you, man. So then you got started speaking. Speaking came first, and then the first book, yeah?
Yeah, what happened was I wrote a book called Effective Communication, and 9 people read it. No, wait, 10, my mother. It had a small audience, okay? And the University of Washington paid me $3,000 to write it. It won an award for academic excellence, and nobody's ever seen it because I didn't own the rights to market it. So then and the goal was at the time, write a book, right? Which is a terrible goal, write a book. What I wanted was a best-selling book. So I sat down and I set a new goal, write a best-selling book. And a year later, I wrote Freedom from Fear, and I sent the manuscript to a mentor of mine, Charlie Tremendous Jones, who's since passed away. And he called me 2 weeks later, and he said, if you can write another story like this, you won't need to speak anymore. And I said, what? He said, I want to publish it. And I said, you're a publisher? And he said, what do you think Executive Books is, an underwear store? So that was the beginning. And then he said, I'm going to print 10,000 and send you 1,000 to sell in the back of the room. And I said, the back of what room? And he said, the back of the room where you speak. And I went, oh, that room. Right. Got it. So I was completely clueless. But the book since sold 100,000 copies, and, you know, AKA best-selling author. So
that's fabulous. That's a great story. And now there's a series of Freedom from books, yeah?
Yeah.
Freedom from Fat.
Right, which I'm publishing myself. So I'm a publisher now, which I can't even spell publisher, but, you know, I am one. So there it is.
Soup guy, baby.
Man, I'm having so much fun. It's like, it's almost like I'm, you know this, you're at some hotel, you're presenting, and here comes a guy in a white shirt with a black coat, and he comes walking in, and you're thinking, okay, this guy's from the government, and he's going to tell me I can't do this anymore, right? Yeah. And it turns out he's just there to refill the water glass. And that's kind of how I feel, right? It's like I'm getting away with something my whole life. So
do you, let's talk about the speaking industry as it is. The other day, I had like this epiphany, and I may be late to the party on this one, but it seems to me that we're not doing seminars anymore, that this whole academic approach to learning, thanks to the technology, thanks to millennials, thanks to just a shift, it seems like things are more of a social environment, more fun. This is going to play right into your wheelhouse. Do you admire, do you see this coming as well?
Oh, from my point of view, Michael, and maybe because I've always done this from the beginning, is I use a lot of humor in my presentations. Most of it is self-effacing. So I say, you know, I'm 5'19" and a half, vertically gifted, follically challenged. I go to the barber, I say, how about those Seahawks? And 30 seconds later, he says, next. I go to give him a tip. He said, no, I couldn't. That'd be stealing. Trim the ears, he means inside. And in the span of 30 seconds, people say, wow, this guy's different. and I use lots of interaction, which millennials crave. And by the way, I think one of the future books I'm going to write is Get Your Head Out of Your App, the difference between millennials and baby boomers.
Nice.
So I'm working on that one. So I think it has to be fun. It has to be interactive. It has to be social. But also, and you know this, it has to be substantive. There needs to be something, and I call it TAR, theory, application, review. There has to be a transfer of skills, and you need to be able to change the other person's cache, knowledge, attitude, skills, and habits. So I think it's absolutely critical that we bring to the table a highly interactive, highly humorous, highly engaging, but substantive content, because content's king. And I've written 10 ebooks and 5 books, and I don't know how many thousands of articles. And I keep writing because I love it. I'm doing podcasts now. I'm doing webinars. I never used to do that. It's funny because the next goal for me is a TED Talk, by the way. That's on my list of goals that I'm going after. And you know this, it's change or die. In this industry, you have to embrace technology. And I mean, I remember 8-tracks, for crying out loud. You being a former rock star, I don't know if you were old enough to actually have 8-tracks out, you know.
No, but I know people that remember 8-tracks.
You've seen it in museums. Yeah, I got you. Yeah, so it's, you know.
Let's talk about TED Talks. I learned recently Terry Gross, the lady that runs NPR so successfully for decades now. She's like a model in the business, you know, in terms of perfection and standard, right? I learned that her programs, and now I'm blanking on the name of the darn show, the radio show on PBS or public radio, Fresh Air. And she says it like this, fresh air, right?
Right.
That Fresh Air is highly, highly edited, which broke my heart because I'm like, I thought she was that good, you know, where
you're just improvising. Yeah, right.
This question just flowed. I learned that TED Talks are very, very highly rehearsed, not only by the speakers, they get a specific list of instructions before they get to the studio. I'm talking about the big one now, not the TEDx's necessarily.
Right.
But then when you get in front of the camera, they like run you through it 3 times or so. Now the talks are 18 minutes long, so that's not an insignificant amount of rehearsal time.
Right.
You're rehearsing now, and I love this, you're not just rehearsing what to say, you're rehearsing how to say it. The camera, the stage, the marks, you're actually in the room imagining the audience. A lot of speakers aren't big on rehearsal, but you study yourself a lot. And it's not clear immediately because, like you say, you're so self-effacing. You make it seem easy. But I get the impression you study yourself and study your performance. Is that true?
It is. And you probably remember this. After our presentation down in Norman, you shared with me, like best next time.
Yeah.
And I've been doing that.
By the way, I didn't write that. But
of course not. But so what? Who cares? All that matters is after every single presentation, I can literally show you in my journal what I did well, what could I improve. After every presentation, and I've done that hundreds and hundreds of times. So here's the thing. You're either getting better or you're getting worse. You're either green and growing or you're ripe and rotting. That's what Ray Kroc said in his book, Grinding It Out. So, you know, the one thing I never hope to hear is you should have heard Mark 5 years ago when he was really something. What I want to hear is I heard Mark 5 years ago, but you ought to hear him now. Man, has that guy improved.
They asked, speaking of longevity, Chicago was recently inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. And there was discussion about bringing back the lead singer, Peter Cetera.
Right.
And a lot of non-musicians think, well, it's just a question of whether or not they get along. And if they get along, they'll be there. And if not, they won't. Cetera's voice has changed quite a bit, and he can't sing in the original key anymore. So he wanted the band to transpose. That would change the impact of the song if the song's no longer in the original key. Even people that don't know music would say something's off. They wouldn't be able to tell you what it was.
Right.
And that's, I think, what it takes to stay in the game and stay sharp and be that present Mark Matteson, not the past Mark Matteson, is that constant review, that constant, what did Covey call it? Sharpening the saw.
Yes.
Yeah, beautiful.
It's absolutely vital. You know, and it's asking for feedback. It's being aware of on and in at the same time. You know, I'm aware of the words I use when I'm talking to someone, but I also course correct while I'm talking. So I literally hear myself talking while I'm talking, if that makes sense.
Sure.
Well, I also course correct when I'm reading an audience. And if I see somebody who's frowning or have their arms folded, I don't look at that person again, right?
Right.
Until a little bit later on. And then I look back over and I notice he's not folding his arms anymore and his eyebrows raised, and I saw him smile. I did a seminar. Okay, so this is one of those things. I was in eastern New Mexico in a tiny little industrial city, and I had a late shift welders, Native American welders. Okay, are you with me so far?
What a coincidence!
New
That's my
Mexico.
perfect crowd choice.
Oh, and these guys were not used to sitting in a seminar. So in the front row was this one fella, and he didn't smile at all. Everyone else was laughing. I use a lot of humor, a lot of deprecating humor. And one client of mine said, "Yeah, I like your self-defecating humor." I knew what he meant. So this one guy's not smiling, right? And everybody else is laughing and slapping their knee. And finally, at the break, I walked up to him. I said, "Let me ask you something. Are you having fun?" He goes, "This is the best time I've ever had in a seminar at work, ever." And I said, "So you're having fun?" He said, "Yeah." I said, "Do me a favor." He said, "What's that?" I said, "Tell your face." Because I kept noticing he was the only guy that wasn't laughing, but inside he was. He was having a good time.
Yeah.
So my point is, I'm constantly calibrating and evaluating how I do, and I want to make sure that I'm getting better every single presentation.
We've known each other a long time, a better part of 2 decades, I think, if you go back far enough. And humor's changed a lot. You talk about self-deprecating humor. You're still working clean, is that? And I don't care either way. Is that true though? You work clean?
Yeah, I am. I'm reading a book right now. You're a Badass, and I forget the woman's name. Nancy somebody, Persione, I think. And then there's Gary Vee. You talked about him. Yeah. And she swears a lot in the book, and like a lot. A lot of W2F, TS, that kind of thing. And I don't use profanity, and I don't. My personal opinion is there's no place for that in corporate America. And doesn't mean that I don't. When I hit my thumb with a hammer, I don't swear. I do, but I think we all do. Yeah. Some guy cuts you off, and then he gives you half a peace sign, and you think, all right, what's wrong with this picture? But that's Seattle traffic, right? So my mentors didn't swear, so I don't swear. I was really blessed to have a couple of guys who I really looked up to that, they operated clean, if you will.
Yeah, I think we've seen a little bit of a shift in it. Robbins has started to curse a bit, and then he folded the 10 on that, went back the other direction. I watched Robbins be a straight man to Gary Vee in a video. It was fascinating because Tony actually looked a little nervous because Gary was just going to be Gary in the end. You knew that.
Right.
Those two paragons, vibrating on the same screen was interesting. The other thing, too, is everything's recorded now. And we live in a politically sensitive time. And I just think, if you've got a good vocabulary and you're expressive and you have command of the language, you probably have more choices than just going into the bucket all the time, right?
I think that's true. If you live in New York, the F word is an adjective, a verb, an adverb, and a noun. And if you have a limited vocabulary, then yeah, you have to fill in the blanks. It's almost like if your vocabulary is limited, it's almost like there's a tooth missing on the gear. And as it rotates around, you go to think of the word and you don't have it. Yeah. There's an or an or an F-bomb.
Yeah, you bet. Well, everybody, I'm talking to Mark Matteson. It's been one of the most lively podcast interviews I've had in a while. His website is sparkingsuccess.net. Is that true, Mark?
That's true.
And his latest book is called Freedom from Fat. I'm going to guess if it's like his other great works, it's not just about fat. It's about freedom from anything. It's about getting control of your own thoughts, emotions, and behavior. And brother, you're keeping the standard high in the industry. I really appreciate that.
Well, it's easy. I'm just trying to keep up with you, man. Former rock star, soul patch brother. I mean, come on. You're a joy to be around, my friend. And it was really nice to reconnect with you.
Let's not make it so long next time. Mark Matteson, everybody, Matteoson, sparkingsuccess.net. Best of luck, Mark.
Thanks, brother. Appreciate it. Happy trails, and make it a great day unless you have other plans.